we're not going to be talking about the most recent horrific incident. Listen, I'm sure you have your own opinions on guns and how to solve this problem, and I'm not here to change them. Instead, we're going to zoom out to provide a complete history of guns in America, and I mean all the way back to England in the 13th century. Hold on, don't leave yet. I'm not going to just talk about the Second Amendment, okay? Guns in America are an extremely complicated issue, and it deserves full historical context. I understand that this is also deeply political, and it's difficult to be completely unbiased. So, I promise you, no political interpretation whatsoever for the history part of the video. Then, I'm going to give you an interpretation that's biased as fuck for all sides of the argument, and give you the full picture regardless of where you sit on the issue. Sound good? Let's set sail for Guns in America, an aggressively unbiased history. Just like a lot of other complicated problems in the world, the origins of the gun problem in America trace all the way back to England. Ever since the Magna Carta was signed in the 13th century, England's history can be viewed through the lens of a power struggle between the king and the parliament. The English Reformation in the 16th century and the resulting religious conflicts are about to topple the first domino that results in school shootings today. 17th century England was a complete clusterfuck, with civil wars and chaos raging everywhere. King James II wanted to grow the influence and military strength of the Catholics, while Parliament really did not want him to get any stronger for obvious reasons. The Glorious Revolution, no, that's actually the name, overthrew him from the throne and finally ended the long bloody war between the parliamentary system and the absolute monarchy. The Parliament strongly believed that every citizen should have the right and the means to protect oneself. Thus, the legendary Bill of Rights was born in 1689 and established the fundamental building blocks of civil society. Okay, that's cool and all, but why the fuck do we care? Britain has knifing problems, not gun problems. Well, this is around the time that the 13 British colonies started popping up in America. The colonists coming over from Britain had the Bill of Rights pre-installed in their brains like Internet Explorer. Take a look here. Can't raise or keep a standing army in peacetime, arms for defense. Yep, you see it now, right? Gun ownership was firmly believed to be a fundamental right even before the United States of America existed. The right to bear arms came from the traumatized spirit of resisting tyranny. This snowballed into the mass shootings of the 21st century today. In mainland Britain, that part about having arms was just a political statement of, don't be mean, or else, and pretty much nothing further. It's a different story for the untouched American continent, where the harsh Mother Nature, wild animals, and hostile Native Americans did their absolute best to kill off the settlers from all directions. You really needed a gun to survive long enough to make a colony back then. Guns in America now represented more than just the Bill of Rights. It was directly tied to the very safety of your own family. Hell, even the British government had no choice but to permit widespread gun ownership in the American colonies because they can't pay taxes if they're all dead. In the 13 British colonies, there had to be something really, really wrong with you if you didn't know how to use a gun. But France also had colonies in America and was competing with Britain here, remember? Not for long. Back home in Europe, Austria and Prussia had a slight disagreement. They both called their respective daddies for help, and all of a sudden, Britain and France were roped in against each other. Things escalated quickly, and this little spat between Austria and Prussia became an all-in, winner-takes-all war with the entire American continent up for grabs. Britain emerged victorious from this bloody, history-changing war and was now the boss of America. All good, right? As a wise old man once said, nobody wins in war. War's really expensive and Britain went broke fighting it. Even worse, they can't even replenish the coffers by increasing taxes on British soil without the approval of Parliament, and good luck with that. So, the big brain idea that the British government had was to come up with all sorts of bullshit reasons to tax the colonies abroad because Parliament doesn't care about them. I'm sure you've heard of the phrase, no taxation without representation. That phrase started here, when the colonists chanted it as they rioted against having to pay for a war they had nothing to do with in the first place. Alas, this really wasn't something they could say no to. Britain really wanted that sweet tax, so they sent more soldiers to America for extra persuasion. Sure, but who's gonna pay for these soldiers to stay there? Britain sure as shit isn't paying for it. Their whole point is to make more money, remember? The poor colonies got their food and housing seized so that the soldiers could oppress them better. Imagine, if you will, barely getting by in a dangerous environment with your family in hopes for a better life, when you get kicked out of your own home, get all your things taken away from you so that the IRS man is warm and comfortable as he ruins your fucking life. Now, wouldn't that just piss you off? Well, it definitely pissed off the colonists, and in 1770, 5 protesters got shot and killed by British soldiers. The infamous Boston Tea Party happened in 1773, and things were definitely starting to spiral out of control. In 1774, Britain realized, oh shit, I forgot that I allowed all these rebels to own guns. Britain hastily banned the export of guns to America and even tried to mass confiscate guns, but saying, big government is gonna take your guns away, doesn't really work now, and sure as shit didn't work back then either. In 1775, the armed American militia clashed with the British Army and started the American Revolutionary War with a literal bang! And we all know how that story ends. The English people tore away power from a tyrannical king and implemented democracy. The American people tore away power from a tyrannical English people and couldn't help but wonder, wouldn't our own government that we're building right now with our own hands, God forbid, one day also abuse the military to oppress our people? You know, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. In 1787, when the US Constitution just barely got signed, people completely lost their shit because they wanted specific language that would guarantee that the basic rights of the American people were more powerful than the interests of the government. In 1789, 12 amendments to the Constitution were proposed and only 10 were adopted. These are the American Bill of Rights. The second term here says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As I'm sure you know already, this is the very Second Amendment that you hear about all the time. I'm sure you all know the emotional impact of guns on the American spirit. Armed civilians rebelled against their fat, greedy British overlords and created a country that stood for freedom and justice. Now that's a story people like to tell. As the fledgling United States manifested its destiny towards the frontier of the Wild West, settlers armed with guns battled natives, wild animals, and outlaws for food and territory just like their ancestors did. For the rugged individualists, guns represented a way to protect yourself with your own hands instead of sitting around waiting for the military or police. And this is where things start going downhill very quickly. Shit's about to get violent. Both sides were desperate during the American Civil War, and everybody that wanted a gun got a gun. The genie was out of the bottle. To make matters worse, the rapid development of the American manufacturing industry meant that an everyday laborer could afford to buy a pistol with a day's work. Naturally, guns were increasingly utilized for all sorts of crimes and were really becoming a problem for society. In 1863, during the American Civil War, protesters in New York had a massive shootout with government soldiers, and it's still the largest civil and most racially charged urban disturbance in American history. TLDR, the protesters didn't want to get drafted, and the government really wanted to draft them. In 1865, President Lincoln was assassinated with a pistol, which led to policemen officially being able to carry guns. The arms race was officially on.
In an 1886 labor protest, anarchists firebombed Chicago police. No, I'm serious. Somebody literally threw a fucking dynamite bomb at the police, and a bloodbath of a chaotic firefight ensued.
This is a legendary incident known as the Haymarket Massacre, where 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians died. The pop, pop, pop sound of gunfire and the horrifying screams a few seconds later were now a part of the American dream. If everyday people and the police are armed to the teeth, organized crime, of course, had to keep up. Gangs armed with full auto weapons waged war against each other in the middle of the city during the 20th century, causing all sorts of collateral damage to bystanders. As you could probably imagine, everyday people did not appreciate dying to a stray bullet on the way to work, and this is how gun control properly got started, to regulate the purchase and use of firearms. In 1934, the first ever gun control bill, aptly named the National Firearms Act, was passed and started the taxation and registration of all eligible firearms. After President John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. both got shot to death, the Gun Control Act of 1968 was passed and regulated the interstate and foreign commerce of firearms. After the failed assassination attempt on President Reagan's life, the Firearm Owners Protection Act was passed and revised a lot of the aforementioned Gun Control Act of 1968. In 1993, the Brady Bill was passed and mandated federal background checks for gun purchases, as well as a mandatory 5-day waiting period. In 1994, the federal assault weapons ban was passed and, banned assault rifles. The list goes on, but gun violence is only becoming more of an issue despite all these regulations. Now, in the 21st century, mass shootings are becoming ever more prevalent. Unlike gang wars or personal resentment, mass shootings are unpredictable acts of rage at typically unrelated targets that are very difficult to prevent. So, what's the solution here? Now, how should we interpret this history? Well, I'll give you all sides, and maybe you'll understand why it's so difficult to come to an agreement for such a complex problem.
People who want more gun regulations have a fundamental belief that the government has the responsibility to protect its citizens. They think that more regulations will reduce the number of gun-related deaths and injuries, ultimately resulting in more safety. On the other hand, people who want less gun regulations have a fundamental belief that gun ownership is a fundamental right protected by the Constitution. They think that guns are absolutely necessary for self-defense, ultimately resulting in more safety. See, both sides of the argument are fighting like hell as if their life literally depends on it, because as far as they're concerned, it actually is. Let's take this a step further. The left believes that the right to bear arms is not absolute, and it must be balanced against other important considerations like public safety. An example is how free speech is protected under the First Amendment, but you still can't yell fire in a crowded place. Therefore, this right must be reined in and reasonable regulations must be implemented to save lives. They point to countries like New Zealand and Australia as evidence that effective gun control works. The right believes that gun ownership is directly protecting them against internal and external threats. After all, it's going to be pretty difficult for a hypothetical tyrannical dictator to implement draconian measures in America when the people won't take it lying down, and this balance of power protects everyone. They point to countries like Mexico and Brazil as evidence that gun control doesn't work. This is a very complex issue, and I'm sure you'll admit that you can see where the other side is coming from if you squint hard enough. Things get significantly messier when these arguments are framed in an emotionally charged debate.
A moderately left person would interpret this history and say, come on, we gotta have some more regulations on gun ownership. Definitely some better background checks. I understand the Second Amendment and how deeply guns are rooted in American history, so chill out. I don't think we should take your guns away. At the same time, I really don't think the Founding Fathers had AR-15s in mind when they wrote the Second Amendment. Why the hell should everybody own assault rifles? Let's be reasonable here. A moderately right person would interpret this history and say, before passing more invasive gun control bills and infringing on the Second Amendment and American culture, how about we do a better job implementing the ones we currently have? I mean, we have all these regulations, and it's not like mass shootings are happening any less. How about we attack the root of this issue while we're at it, and think about mental illness or illegal drug use? I understand gun violence is a problem, so let's give better education to the people and actually make sure that criminals can't buy guns. Well, what do you think? Don't like how I represented the moderate and far left and right? I literally just fed a blank opinion on gun control into ChatGPT, word the results in the context of this video, and infused a bit of the passionate language I hear from Fox News and CNN. It's a complicated issue, isn't it? What's the solution here? Fuck if I know. I'm just a guy on the internet that makes YouTube videos. Even if I did have a solution, I'm sure as hell not announcing it here and Thanos snap away half my ad revenue. But knowing the full historical context now, what's your solution? This has been Captain David Bradford from Knowledge Raiders, and go fight each other in the comments section or something, whatever.